One of the most talked about things in the world of productivity these days is someone's morning routine. What is the optimal $1 million morning routine? That is the question, and it's for good reason. However, in my opinion, if you aren't already doing this one thing, then there's no point in searching for the optimal morning routine just yet, and that is waking up early. In today's video, I'm going to break down some of the ways that you can start waking up early that aren't cold showers, cold immersions, meditation, and all the usual stuff, so make sure to stick around. Here's hoping that in today's short video, I can convince you, my oh so lovely viewer, that waking up just that little bit earlier might just improve your life. So first and foremost, why do I actually advocate for us getting up early? And I put that in inverted commas because early is a relative term. One person's 5 a.m. might be another person's 3 p.m, depending on night shifts, childcare, time zone, etc., etc. So I just want to nip that in the bud, that early is a relative term in this sense. So for context, for the past couple of years, I've been getting up at 5 a.m, and that is because I feel that for my training, for my businesses, for my workflow, for my general happiness, for my general productivity, the first couple of hours of the day are the most important. If I can make progress, get ahead, and really structure what the rest of the day is going to look like, then I am much more productive, my output is much higher, and I'm actually much happier. However, it hasn't always been that way. If we rewind to university, going to a 9 a.m. lecture was about as likely as me competing in the Olympic rowing team, which at 182 centimeters tall is probably off the table. Couple that with some vicious hangovers and a bit of a pattern of wanting to catch up on sleep as a result of doing so, with a real discontent for the course I was in fact studying at university, 9 a.m. was a tall order, and I'd normally be getting up at about 8:30, 9 a.m. for 3 years of my life. That rolled into my graduate scheme down in London, where I was working in the alcohol trade, and a lot of the same patterns were replicated, which meant that I didn't have much of a morning routine. Every day felt rushed, my commute was always rushed, I'd always be leaving things behind, and my general productivity always felt a little bit stretched. However, in 2018, I was sat in a coffee shop in London, and I took the decision to commit to my first charity-focused endurance challenge. And when I did, I was still working full-time down in London, so I had to make the time to get everything done. That everything was my training, that was the charity fundraising, that was the engagement with the sponsors, the engagement with people on Facebook and Instagram to try and get money in the bank, and everything else that goes with really chucking the kitchen sink at a charity project. So what that taught me is just how valuable a commodity time is, and that you watching this are not the busiest person in the world, yet the busiest person in the world will still be able to make the time depending on their priorities. So from 2018 to now, I really learned the lesson and have had it reinforced over the years just how much I can take control of my time based on my priorities, and how much I can manipulate it to get the best out of myself. And that is why I believe we should all focus on giving ourselves that opportunity and making the time to wake up that little bit earlier. So the second point today is going to expand a little bit more on something I've already covered, which is what works for me might not necessarily work for you, but there are some threads of DNA, some foundations that run through all of this that can be applied to the individual. So for a little bit of context, you might have heard the phrase circadian rhythm before, and that is something that we should all be aware of. I've become a lot more aware of it in the past couple of years because I've educated myself on how I can manipulate it, understand it to get the best out of myself. And whilst it would be stupid of me to suggest that if we had a room full of 10 people and I said you should all get up at 5 a.m. or you're not working hard enough or you're doing it wrong, that would be foolish. But what I would be confident saying is that everybody in that room should do their best to have consistent bedtimes and consistent wake-up times, because that circadian rhythm, that pattern of our human biology, underpins our sleep and wake cycle, our adenosine, our relationship with what time of the day we're best suited to certain tasks. Essentially, playing around too much with your circadian rhythm is the mechanism that underpins jet lag. And you wouldn't actively try and be jet lagged, so why would you actively try and work against your circadian rhythm? Wow, what a great question, Fergus. You should probably stick around. So in terms of general prescription, the only thing I'm going to say today that I think is completely generalized is that we should aim for consistent sleep and waking patterns if you can. Obviously shift workers, it'll be difficult, and I haven't experienced that, so I can't give too much advice. But beyond that, we should be aware of our circadian rhythm, take note of how we respond to certain things at certain times of the day. Do you feel stronger in the afternoon? Do you know that if you eat late at night, that's going to disrupt your sleep, etc., etc., etc. That's where something like Whoop can be a really good way of monitoring how you interact over time, and you can even track your sleeping patterns as you go. But you can do it manually, you can set up an Excel spreadsheet if you're that way inclined, but keeping track of it is something I'd recommend that you do. The other thing to be mindful of, and something that I've really been confronted with recently, is sunlight and darkness and how we make the most of that if you're getting up early in the conventional sense. So one of the key indicators that we are waking up and getting our day started and therefore ready to perform and switch on is sunlight hitting our skin. And when it's dark, it's harder for that to be the case. If you're up first thing and walking the dogs, you can be outside for 3 hours without any sunlight here in Scotland and other parts of the world as well. So something I've done is I've got a seasonal affective disorder lamp at my desk, so if I'm ever sitting at my desk, I'm getting some artificial sunlight on my skin, which I found's made a huge difference. But I do know a few people that actually almost seasonally manipulate their sleep and wake cycles so that they're getting up a little bit later and going to bed a little bit later over the winter, so that there's less time between waking up and them having some sunlight into their eyes and onto their skin. So I'm not going to sit here and make this an entirely circadian rhythm focused video, but what I am going to do is suggest that you do a little bit of research on it so you can better understand why you interact with certain things in the way that you do on a day-to-day basis, and how you can adjust your lifestyle and your habits to get the best out of it, because it's a biological pattern that we can't really avoid. It's a part of who we are, so why not lean into it and get the best out of it? Thirdly, let's view time as a profit and loss sheet and discuss what return on investment I get from waking up early. So I'm going to run through a few of the benefits that I have found from waking up early in the hope that maybe you can too. So as I've already mentioned, I found the first few hours of my day to be the most productive, the most engaging, and the most cognitive. And that's not a discovery I've come to overnight. It's something that I've discovered from doing the reps over time and experimenting with different working patterns and routines, and found what works best for me. So there's a recommendation in there for you, which is to do the reps and experiment around with routines. What one person on the internet says works for them isn't going to work for you, so it's up to you to do the reps and figure out what works. But with that in mind, I do find that for me, the first couple of hours of the day are the most productive. There is the least amount of external stressors, distractions on the go. The dogs are still calm downstairs, there's no bricklayers outside, there's no cars flying past, there's less sirens depending on where you live. And I can just focus on the task in front of me, which means that 2 hours work could be the equivalent of 5 hours of distracted work. It's not as simple as that, but sometimes that is genuinely how I feel. So whether I'm training or at my desk, I often find that that's really focused, really meditative, and really valuable work time. As well as this, in terms of deep work, a very popular phrase on the internet at the moment as well, this is when I can get my focused work done before calls kick in, before I've seen a news article, before I've had an email that winds me up. And it means that I can focus on the task in front of me without having other things pinging or thinking about something that's coming up in 15 minutes and getting distracted in the sort of convoluted world in which we all exist. So it can be the time that I devote to certain things, and then it's up to me and goes back to what I mentioned before, which is prioritizing what those things are. As well as this, for those of you that might be new around here, I conventionally have quite a high training volume. The most recent event I completed was the double brutal extreme triathlon, which was a 7.6k swim, a 373k bike, and an 84.4k run, essentially over an entire weekend with 15 minutes of sleep in the middle. And there was also about 8,200 meters of elevation gain to contend with as well. So my training volume for that was around 28 to 30 hours a week, on top of running 2 businesses and trying to keep Erin and the dogs content and happy, which at points was challenging, I will flippantly say. But in that, I was forced to really determine what worked best for me, and that's where I've really found the routine that I have found the best. So by getting training done first thing, by laying my stuff out the night before, by getting everything prepped and structured so that I can wake up and crack on, it means that I could fit in plenty of double training days, triple training days, without waking up and scrambling to find certain things or worrying about how busy a day I had, because I'd essentially done the work the night before to set myself up for the day to come. So in really practical terms, it means I can get more work done during the week. It means I can earn more money during the week. It means I can be more effective and focus on quality with my training. It means I'm a happier, healthier version of myself with my friends and family. It means the dogs probably have a stricter routine, and it means that I can maybe have a bit more flexibility in the evenings. Whereas if I fall out of this routine, I often find that I really struggle to get everything in on a week-by-week basis, which can cause me a lot of stress. So that's the return on investment for me within the context of what I share on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, podcasts, etc. So for those of you that have that context, that's how this routine helps me. If you're new around here, then hopefully I've given enough context that you understand my point of view. Okay, so point number 4 is, what are the best things to do once you've woken up? And I think this might be the most controversial or hotly debated one, as it's not really that clear online. But that's for good reason, because it's essentially up to you, your priorities, and where you feel you get the most ROI. I think the problem with the podcast and YouTube culture that we've developed is people can lay out these item by item, bit by bit morning routines that people then feel inclined to follow word for word, hour for hour, minute for minute. And if they're not doing that, then they're not working hard enough, or they're not disciplined enough, or they're not strict enough. When in reality, those routines have been crafted for the person that's sharing the information with you rather than for you, the viewer. And there's no one that makes this point better than the $100 million man himself, Mr. Alex Hormozi.
You don't need to create some magical morning routine where you sing a flute, magical dance outside and sing in the rain and the journals and all the other shit. Like, there's work to be done. And the question is, how quickly can I begin that work? That's it.
And if he's made $100 million whilst not really being in the camp that you should do X, Y, Z every single morning, then I think he's probably got a point. And I want to make clear that yes, for some people, ice plunges, yoga, meditation, all these sort of in vogue, fashionable things at the moment might be really intrinsically valuable and useful for you. They are not an essential component of a morning routine. For me, I found getting up and getting ahead of the day and just cracking on straight away is actually a really useful way of delegating my time, or getting up and getting my training session done, which means that by 7 a.m, I've got 1 out of 2 training sessions done, which means I can take so much pressure off the rest of the day. So at this point, I want to make my opinion crystal clear, and I think this is essentially the essence of the video. The morning routine that is most optimal is the one that gets you to commit the most action on the things that you wish to achieve. If you're sitting here wondering, well, that's all well and good, but I don't know what I'm working towards in my life, or my job is so stressful, or my childcare is so stressful that I can't get up and make the time for myself, I come back to the point I made earlier where I'm definitely not the busiest person on the planet. It's up to making the time and determining your priorities. And that might not mean that you have 2 hours before waking up that you can block out for deep work, but it might mean that you give yourself the liberty to read a chapter before your kids get up, or go out for a 5-minute walk with the dogs without a podcast, without music, where you can just switch off before the day starts. It might mean that you get up and make yourself a cup of tea that you sit and drink in silence, rather than making one for your husband and then going in and wrestling with the kids. Whatever it might be, it's up to you to make the time to determine what gives you the best opportunity to take action. If you're unsure on what action should be or what you're working towards, this is where sitting down and really thinking about your goals for the year, setting weekly, monthly, overarching goals on how you want to develop as a person, how you develop as an athlete, how you develop as an entrepreneur, in your career, as a father, as a parent, whatever it might be. You can look at things vaguely, black and white, in detail, set very black and white goals, but also set some really vague goals as well, because it's very easy in this day and age to label a certain day a success or a failure, when in reality, I think in the current economic and geopolitical climate, simply getting through the day is a huge win. So point number 5, Fergus, you've said a lot of things at this point, but you haven't actually told me how to wake up early, which is what this video is titled, and that is a very fair point. But drumroll please, if we come to the number 1 point, the thing that I think is most important, most valuable, and will make the biggest change in your day-to-day life, it is getting these things out of your bedroom. For real, get them out, get them into the kitchen, get them into the spare room, get them into the corridor, and if you have people that you don't want to wake up, then don't use the alarm feature on your phone. Get a cheap alarm clock from Amazon. I use the alarm feature on my wrist from Whoop, which I found to be fantastic, but it's quite easy to snooze this. So what I recommend, as I did at the start, was using the alarm feature on this, setting alarm on your phone in another room with a minute to go, and then you know that if you don't get this up, some horrible I'm a Barbie Girl song is going to start playing in the other room if you don't get there in time. And that did work for me. It might work for you. Main thing as well is if your phone's not within touching distance of the bed and you've got to get up to turn it off, you're out of bed. The hardest part of the morning is complete. Big tick in the box, you are out of bed. Well done. This sounds overwhelmingly simple, but it's actually significantly more effective than any supplement, any hack, or any new research that I can recommend you that's going to make a world of difference. Just by taking the devices that sort of plague us, that give us lots of external stressors, and we're slightly inclined to just find convenience in, take it out of arm's reach and you'll be much better off. It's important at this point to mention as well, this video isn't about recommending that you sacrifice sleep. It's about improving your quality of sleep and monitoring your circadian rhythm, because the last thing in the world I want people to be doing is coming in from a shift at 1 in the morning and then thinking, oh, I need to get up at 5 in the morning because some guy on the internet told me to do so. No, you need to get adequate sleep, you need to work your schedule around what makes sense for you, and you need to use the principles that underpin a well-maintained circadian rhythm and a well-maintained morning routine to determine what's best for you. So I just want to make that crystal clear before I go any further. So as with most things, Zone 2 training is the one I most often use this example for on this channel. You need to start small and build things up. And by that I mean, don't go away from this video feeling all motivated, feeling all amped up, and take your sleep schedule from waking up at 9 in the morning to 5 in the morning, because you're not going to get enough sleep, you're going to feel terrible, and you're probably going to hate me. So in terms of actually implementing this over time, for 1 week at a time, you can bring your bedtime forward 15 minutes and bring your wake time forward 15 minutes. And you can repeat that week on week until you've got the morning routine that you think works best for you. But I really want to emphasize that you are not bringing your wake time forward, but keeping your bedtime the same, because all you're doing there is restricting your sleep, and that is not what we want to do. Sleep is the #1 performance enhancer in the modern world, and it doesn't get the credit that it deserves. And finally, the point that I've made in so many videos recently, because I have been reminded personally of just how valuable it is, having not done it a few times, especially over the winter, especially with training, especially when you're running your own businesses, and I can only imagine, especially when you have children, is to lay your stuff out the night before. A good, effective morning routine starts the night before. You should plan out what the day looks like. I do it hour by hour, whether you do that in Outlook calendar on here, whether you do it manually, whether you do it in Notion, whatever system works for you. Plan out your day hour by hour so you know what's coming. You're not going to get surprised, and then what you can do is you can work backwards and you can plan hour by hour. What do I need? Where is it? There it is. I can get up, and then I'm going here, and then I'm grabbing that, and then I'm going here, and then I'm doing that. And then before you know it, you've had a productive day, you feel great, and you are well on your way to maybe, we can all dream, being like the $100 million man, Alex Hormozy. Hashtag never skip dessert. Okay, so job done, and I'm going to do my best to summarize the main points that have been made today. And whilst that hasn't been a piece-by-piece guide that you can take away on how you can wake up earlier and do exactly what I've said you should do, that's because I don't believe that is what you should be doing. I believe you should be taking today's video, unpacking the things that I've said in general terms, applying it to your individual circumstances, and then being analytical about how you respond to it. Simple as that. Nobody has the answers here, and if anybody's telling you they have the answers on this being the perfect morning routine, they're probably trying to sell you something, or they're just a little bit naive to other people's lifestyle, living conditions, and general existence. So with that in mind, let's break down the key points from today, which I think are as follows. Monitor your circadian rhythm, and by that I mean be strict with your bedtime and wake time. Don't sacrifice sleep for the sake of getting up at the time that somebody on the internet told you to do so. That's not what we're aiming for here. Try and determine what time of the day is best for what activities for you and your priorities, and then work it in and structure your day accordingly. You may well be like me and find that the first couple of uninterrupted hours of the day are the most productive for you. If so, give it a go. Let me know how you get on. I'd love to hear from you. Lay your stuff out the night before. That's one that I've said 1,000,001 times in videos recently, but it's clearly an important point. And most importantly, be open to trying new things, and don't get sucked into the facade that is all of the gimmicky things online that we see that can be valid. They can be valid for individuals, but they are not the be-all and end-all of what sets you up for success in your day. We all have different circumstances, we all have different priorities. The important thing is to look at them for what they are, and then structure your day-to-day existence and calendar to get the best out of yourself, ultimately. That's what this channel is all about. It's all about improving yourself across the board and not letting people in their box shout loud enough to make you think otherwise. We're all great at different things. Individuality is the name of the game. There is no one better on this earth at being you than you. So hopefully the things that I have shared have been useful and have at least made you think a little bit differently about how you can be analytical and make changes in your habits and structures and routines, and why potentially the thing that runs beneath all that is just getting up a little bit earlier to buy yourself the time to execute things efficiently. So with that in mind, thank you very much for watching. Please do make sure to hit like down below that you have hit subscribe, and please share any comments, thoughts, feelings, structures, routines, habits, things you'd recommend in the comments down below. It would be fantastic if anyone that has their thought provoked in this video today can have it further provoked by a collective resource down in the comments below. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.